Welcome to another edition of Uncommon Knowledge for Seniors. Today we have Patty Sherin. Patty's with ABC Dementia, and she teaches a course on everything dementia, which is huge. And Patty, thank you for being here today. This is just a great topic. I know we've talked a lot about it, and my mother was deeply into dementia for years and years and years, and it's a confounding situation, I guess, at best, for most people. And the more knowledge you can have about it, obviously, is the key to it. But how'd you go down this road? How'd you get involved in this thing?
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Um, so I hmm, so I'm a Lego artist. I really enjoy the tool or the toy Lego. Um, Many years ago, I wanted to share my love of Lego with a different population. Most folks do create um, events for children or do things
Yeah.
with children.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to, it was such an amazing tool, I thought, to bring out your creativity and bring out joy and um, and my love of Lego. So I asked a friend of mine who owned a memory care community in Pacifica and in the Bay Area. And I asked her if I could go to her community and share my love of Lego. And she said yes. I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, but I thought I'd try. I went there and they brought out six older individuals around a dining room table. Some of them were in wheelchairs and others weren't. And I introduced myself, and not a single person looked up. It was really amazing. I was like, whoa. So I got down on each person's level and I spoke to Mary, who was about 80 years old, and I asked her if she was a cat or dog person. And I was shocked when she just looked at me, smiled, and said thank you. Um, so I actually had a Duplo dog and a cat, and I asked her, I says, "Do you want a dog or a cat?" And I was really surprised that she couldn't even give me that answer. She smiled, and so I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So I decided to give her a Duplo flower. And she looked at it, she examined it, she took it from me and started examining it. And she did something that I've never seen anybody else do before. She took the flower, put it upside down, and spun it like a top. And in that moment, in that dining room, her face just lit up. Her thin eyebrows raised, and she clapped her hands together and she just was super excited about it. And I was like, what an amazing thing,
Yeah.
right? It was something that she didn't expect. I didn't expect it. But in that moment, she had this moment of joy. And it was just amazing to me. Um, so since then, I have introduced Duplo to hundreds of seniors in memory care communities and found that people just loved the activity. Um, I found out that there were different types of builders and that there were different ways of enjoying Lego, and that there was no right or wrong with it. No, like people like to give folks with dementia puzzles, and there's only one way to do a puzzle. Whereas with Lego, there's no right or wrong. Some people like to sort colors. Others love the minifigures. Some would build these abstract buildings. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
So who would think you could develop that out of a toy? Just that.
a toy, absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
really,
Oh, you're frozen.
Wow. That's just
You're
incredible.
back.
Wow. There we go.
It was so much fun. I loved it. It brought me so much joy just being able to be there and supporting people with dementia. I found that my job was to just give them what they were attracted to, right? Like I said, some were into the animals and the minifigures, others love the bricks and the building, and others just simply love sorting colors. And again, none of it was wrong, right? It was just something that gave them something to do that brought them joy and they enjoyed. Um, then the pandemic happened and all group activities stopped. So I wrote my book, Brick by Brick Bonding, which talks about the activity and how to approach it in your own home or in your own community, and how you introduce Lego to folks with dementia. Of course, you can't just put a bucket of bricks in front of somebody and expect them to know what to do, right? Because the majority of folks that I met were 80 and above. I had a couple of centurions who I used to play with, and it was amazing. So I wrote the book. And then I started reaching out to folks in LinkedIn, and that's when I met Laura Herman. And Laura Herman was a dementia care specialist. And when I sent her the rough copy of my book, she took it and was an amazing writer and rewrote and talked about why this activity, like I approached it as a artist and she turned it into a therapeutic activity, using this activity to um, encourage reminiscing, to support and encourage intergenerational play. She talked about why this activity was so important in engagement and, quality of life and all these things. So immediately I was like, oh my goodness, you're amazing. We need to partner together. You need to be my co-author. And she was like, oh, you don't have to do that. I'm like, yes, you do.
Wow.
Because you've just really uh, just added so much to it. And so I was so grateful. And after we finished writing the book and we published, we decided to create the course ABC Dementia, which stands for Appreciating Behavior Communication in Dementia. Um, Teepa Snow talked about, you know, being in the space or trying to um, meet people where they were with dementia, but Laura took it to the next level and talked about unmet needs and behavior communication, not only in dementia, but in all of us. When our unmet needs aren't met, it comes out in behavior, right? So, yeah, we created this course for or community for caregivers to have a place to not only get resources on what it's like, how to prepare for the caregiving journey, but a support system, community for people to come together and talk about what they're going through and how we can support one another.
So community could be anyone from a professional caregiver to a family member, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
like whoever that is to have the need that's dealing with this. And but
Right.
what are some of I guess early diagnosis or early signs of dementia? Is there a bellwether of some sort for that you can see is like this is going to get worse, or this is something that we need to be aware of, or what does that look like?
Right. So, a lot of folks, so there's a difference between natural aging and then dementia. Natural aging, we become forgetful. Life is so busy these days. We forget where we put our keys. We forget, words sometimes, words fail us, but that's natural That's natural aging. The difference with dementia is they forget that they have keys, right? Or they forget how to pay their bills. There's a difference. In the beginning, it might be very slight, and people are really good at masking some of these problems.
Mm.
So in the beginning, it could be like, huh, is mom being just forgetful, or is there a problem? And so, a doctor is really the best person to determine. There's lots of tests that can be done to see if it's just natural aging. I've met people who are 100 and, we're still sharp as a tack, but sometimes they forgot a certain word or something like that. And then there are others who I met somebody who developed dementia in their 40s. It was early onset dementia, and that was just devastating for the family. So again, it's very personalized, and it's hard to really know the difference, and you really need a professional to tell you and to go through, certain tests to make sure whether it's cognitive decline due to a disease like dementia or Alzheimer's, or if it's just natural aging.
And then I guess the next question is what kind of treatment can be done? Is there a way to slow it down or stop it or catch it in the beginning like a virus or something like that? But I guess it's obviously different.
Right. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we don't have any treatment plans for dementia. Um, there are ways to mitigate not getting it. Keeping active is very, very important for to avoid getting dementia. Um, Eating well, sleep is super, super important. Um, and and then learning, always constantly learning new things, right? Exercising the mind, it's so important. I can't express how important it is to always be learning something new, whether it's Sudoku, whatever like you enjoy to do, just as long as you're pushing your mind to try something new. Some people like puzzles, some people like art, others like math, whatever it is, learning science, whatever, keeping up to date with current activities, just constantly exercising your brain.
Well, it's always a
But
concern, isn't it? When they retire, when they retire, they're just not doing what they were doing before, and now they're sitting on the couch and wondering what to do. And I think that's, I guess, the perfect ground for that to happen.
right,
Have those kinds of things go on, and
absolutely.
knowingly, that's just the reality of it. So
Right, but you can seek, right? I mean, yes, once you retire, I must be challenging, especially if your whole life was about, work and providing for your family, right? After that, sometimes, because I meet a lot of people who don't know what brings them joy, what makes them happy, nature, going out in nature, taking walks. I mean, we live in Central Oregon, so most people are outdoorsy here, and love nature. That definitely is fulfilling and brings joy and, recharges us. But of course, remember, dementia is a genetic disease. It could be part of your genetics, so there's no way to avoid it if it's in your if it's in your future, right? But again, exercise is so important. Learning new things,
mhm.
and keeping your mind active is very important.
I think it's probably true of a lot of, I mean, certainly true of a lot of things. And
Mhm.
what what kind of research is being done on dementia um,
There is a lot of
You know, I guess
research.
so, you know, what can we do about this type thing? What is there a is there a certain class or organization that's spearheading that kind of thing that would be worth supporting or knowing more about that would be
Well, there's tons of organizations out there who are trying their best to figure out how to combat this disease. Um, of course, the NIH is always doing research on it. The Alzheimer's Association is always looking for ways to improve, but they're limited with, what they can and cannot do. Um, I'm sure you could do a search on who is doing the latest research, and you'll find that what I tend to focus on mostly is caregivers and taking care of themselves. Because when I started writing the book Brick by Brick Bonding, I was focusing more on, quality of life for people who already had the disease. But when I was researching for the book, I found this horrible stat that spouses were dying before their person with dementia. And it was because of caregiver burnout. And so that is really something that um, both horrified and hopeful um, for, because, caregivers are a special breed. They give up their lives to take care of another human being,
oh yeah.
whether it's their parent or their spouse or their grandparents, and they give up their lives. And they are constantly going and doing and taking care of everyone but themselves. And so it is so important. I feel that my message is to help caregivers understand that self-care is not a luxury. It is a necessity. In order to take care of someone else, you must take care of yourself. Because if you don't, you will get sick and something will happen to you. I know this doctor who well, she doesn't specialize in dementia. She's an ER doctor. And she talks about how I was attending one of her Q&As, and she was talking about how she had a patient come in with a heart attack, and it was the spouse of somebody with dementia. And so he came in with his wife, and she had to admit both of them because she had nowhere to go. He was her primary caregiver, and she could not send his wife home alone because she was in the advanced stages. And most people don't think about that, right? If you're caring for someone, and if it's your spouse or your mom, what happens to them
Yeah.
if you end up in the hospital? So this is extremely important.
Well, then I was struck by how about the velocity of the disease and how quickly it progressed from literally from day to day. And it was like, well, like with my mother, back to that, but it was uh, it was so visible, so stunning. And I think for a caregiver, it's like they would know that, but I think experiencing it and having it happen, it's just that are two different things, you know, and it would I guess be important to know that, but that's just how it is, right? I mean, it's just that's the most common way of 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 the progression of the disease. It's fast and it does go quickly, and the I guess the velocity of it is just amazing as to how quick it goes, and dealing with that, to your point, has got to be stressful, and certainly is stressful. And I always felt there was a certain place in heaven for those people that are doing that, you know, and it's just just a remarkable gift to see that. And it's like, man,
Absolutely.
just bless your heart, you know,
Yeah.
it is amazing. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Being a caregiver is probably one of the hardest jobs in the world. It's, I think it's hardest on the families because they see their mom or dad or spouse who were amazing human beings, productive members of society, and deteriorate. It's extremely difficult, but at the same time, it can be a gift. We were talking before we started recording about unmet needs. And the amazing thing about dementia is that you start forgetting, you know, the trauma or the difficulties or the challenges that you faced in life. And you kind of start, um, it kind of like you are reverting back to who you truly are. You know, sometimes we tend to go through life and do things in order to survive, right? We do things in order to be productive at work, to raise our family, and we do things that we normally would not have done. And so, in the perfect world, right? Um, but we do these things. And then as the disease progresses, you start forgetting, you know, the most recent part of your lives and you start going backwards in time. So you start remembering things that happened, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, in such detail, like you're there. And it's amazing. I mean, I've heard countless stories of people who, you know, who accept and don't fight or resist what is happening to their person with dementia and thus embrace what they're going through. So a lot of times people start having like delusions or hallucinations or misperceptions. And our instinct is to fight that. It's like, oh, no, no, that's not true. That's not true. But when you do that, that's when they feel the need to protect themselves from their caregivers.
mm,
So I'll give you an example. I was caring for a woman who was in the late stages of the disease. And I'm a very, you know, my emotions are all over my face, right? I can't hide it. And I came in one day, and the first thing she said to me is like, somebody put a dirty diaper on me. And I'm sitting there like, why would anybody do that? I was like, that's insane, right? And it was all over my face. And I was like, well, let's go check. And the whole time I was there, all she kept saying was somebody put a dirty diaper on me. Somebody put a dirty diaper on me. And she kept repeating herself and repeating herself and repeating herself. And I kept trying different things, different um techniques and different things to say. Oh, sweetie, that's not true. Or, you know, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Or, you know, I just tried different techniques and nothing worked. So I went home that night and I was like, what can I do for her? I don't know why she's stuck in this idea. So the following morning, and of course, you know, like I said, it was written all over my face. So she knew that I didn't believe her. Right. So the next day I go in and the same thing. First thing out of her mouth, somebody put a dirty diaper on me. And I was like, oh my goodness, sweetie, that is awful. Come on, let's go check, you know, and that terrible. I don't know why someone would do that to you. You're such an amazing person. And she was totally fine with that. She was like, I believed her, and that's all she wanted.
just wanted
She
to
just
know. Yeah.
that someone was hearing her, someone was listening to what she was saying. That's all they want, you know? So sometimes they'll come up with this crazy things, and logically, we're like, that can't be true, know, but in
And
that moment and in that time, they believe it. And it doesn't matter. The truth of the matter, it doesn't matter whether she believes it or not. What is important is that she felt heard and seen. That's what's more important
you know,
because then she let
she
it go and never brought it up again. I was shocked.
I think once again, my mom, she would frequently say, "I want to go home."
Right.
I'd like to go home, and I guess that's a very common thing,
It is very common. It's like,
and
what is
we
that?
would
And
try to
yeah,
engage with that, but it was always just, well, I just want to go home. It's just,
right,
it's like, well,
right.
you know,
One thing I would I wish I had known you back then because I would have asked you to ask her, what does that mean? Well,
yeah,
tell me where's home? Find out what it was about home that made her feel safe and loved
no,
and encouraged, right? So try to find out what that means. You know, is that home with her parents? You know, and then try to um replicate whatever that was that meant to them, right? Because home means something different to many different people. It could be, their spouses or when their kids were little or things like that. You get a lot of people saying, I got to go pick up the kids, or my daughter's waiting for me or things like that. So it's try to understand what are they trying to say? What is it? What feeling they're trying to replicate? And then, and also be kind to yourself as a caregiver.
mhm,
Sometimes it's going to take a while to figure out what it is they're trying to say. So, you know, it, I look at it as being a kind of like a detective, right? We become detectives to try to figure out what are they trying to say? What is it that they need? Um, and it can be challenging, right? Because you're worried about so many different things. You're worried about the doctor's visit. You're worried about, are they eating right? Making sure they don't fall, making sure that they're clean and they're happy and there's just so many things that we think about as caregivers. Denise Brown came out recently and she keeps updating this list that there are 19 different systems that we have to deal with as a caregiver, including, health, legal, financial, are they safe? Are they eating right? I mean, there's just so many things that we have to worry about. And then on top of that, to have somebody who is confused and trying to find out what it is that they need, it's a lot. It's a lot.
and this is just a small part of your 3-day class, right? I mean, that's
That's
just it's just the tip of that iceberg. I would like that. It's like, and I'm sure that goes by quickly. I can only imagine that it's just like a sponge,
right.
with all the things that go through in it. And um I just think this class must be just a miracle for people. Because where else are they going to get this? I
Right.
think that's the big question. It's not something you Google and just figure out. I mean, it's not. It's a rigor, and it's something that really needs to be taught from your chair, from somebody that's done this before. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the greatest thing is being able to have that kind of knowledge, especially for a caregiver, but even just for the average person. I think that's if you're dealing with this and you're going to be dealing with it, you might as well know what you're doing.
Right, right. Especially in this world where everything is happening so quickly, and then when you're dealing with someone with dementia who I think what most people don't understand, when you're an able-bodied person, all these things happen in milliseconds. So think about this. In order to have a conversation, you and I are having this conversation. The processes that go into that I'm taking in information. I need to process what you just said. I have to think about what my response is going to be and then give the response. There are like 4 or 5 different
Hmm.
steps along the way that happen within our brains within seconds. But all those processes for people with dementia have broken down. So when you're talking to someone in dementia, you want to talk to them slowly, simply, and give them time to respond. That's something a lot of people don't understand. So yes, thank you for bringing up the course. My partner, my business partner, Laura, created this amazing 18-hour course that goes from everything from the diagnosis all the way to the end, and helping people with their daily activities or their ADLs. Um, she goes through everything about how to figure out your unmet needs, how to communicate when someone has lost their ability to verbally communicate. We talk about, attention, cognitive load, how dementia affects the brain, all these things. When we first started our community, we were focusing on family members who are dealing with dementia. And now we are expanding to professionals
Hmm.
because we are finding that the majority of professionals just do not have enough training,
Yeah.
don't understand how to deal with people with dementia. I'll give you a perfect example. I went to a caregiver cafe, and there was a woman there who said that her mom was saying that she had bugs in her head. And the leader of that particular cafe is like, well, maybe she's hallucinating and she needs hallucinogenic drugs. And I was like, no, like, no, please, no. And I went up
Yeah.
to the woman afterwards and I said to her, I was like, does your mom have dry skin? We live in Central Oregon. People, we have dry skin because it's very dry here. And she's like, yes, she's been having a lot of dry skin. I'm like, maybe that's what she's trying to tell you, that her scalp is dry. And how do you explain that your scalp is dry? I got bugs in my head. Right. Right. And she was like, oh my goodness, yes, thank you. Right. So we have to just decipher what somebody's trying to say, so yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think for professionals that are facing this, I mean, this is just essential information, obviously. You just got to have this. And then to your point, where else are you going to get it? And it's certainly not a curriculum, I would think, that's taught, so to speak,
Right.
in the medical
Yeah.
journals and such. But
The majority out there is talking about the specific disease, it's unfortunate when you get a diagnosis. We really want to change this because if you talk to a doctor, nowadays doctors don't even want to diagnose people with dementia because they really don't know what to say, right? They're dealing with so many different types of diseases and things like that. My my ambition is to really help doctors help people provide resources
yeah,
because
where are they going to
usually
go?
exactly,
That's the
exactly,
thing. And
right, they just tell you get your affairs in order and come back in 6 months.
yeah,
That's a horrible thing to say to somebody. you it's like you're just offering that's a defeatist point of
yeah,
view, right? Whereas there's so many things. I know so many people with dementia who are living amazing lives, who are finding out what really brings them joy, what is really focusing on what's important in this life. right? It's family, it's connection, it's social interactions. It's, each of us is different. I love art, so to me, making art makes me happy, right? It's what brings me joy. It's the thing that I love sharing with the world. Right. So each of us have our unique talents and unique points of view, and to be able to share that, even with dementia. I know a couple of writers who just are amazing poets and writing amazing stories. So if you're diagnosed with dementia, you know, use this opportunity to bring out your best self and share it with the world.
So Patty,
It's
to that point, how does somebody get in touch with you about this and how to get involved in classes and find out what's going on and be able to
excellent. I'll
reach out to
put
you and get this information. And I'll put everything in the show notes, and
perfect.
how often do you do this class? I guess that's the other question.
So excuse me, Laura created the on-demand class so anyone could go at their own pace and take the class. I am doing a live presentation of the 18 hours in May, at the end of May, and you'll have the link for that. Also, if you are looking for resources, specific resources, go to abcdementia.org, and that will give you a link to our course and community. In there, we have resources that are free to anyone, that you can go in if you're looking for something specific, or a lot of times people don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's a great place to go through our library, and I'm sure you'll find something that you didn't even think that you needed. If you become a member of our course and community, which is just $29 a month, you'll have access to our support groups and all of Laura's micro lessons. She created a vast library of micro lessons, short little lessons that will help you deal with your caregiving journey.
Wow. Well, Patty, I can't thank you enough. It was so great to be able to meet you finally and to be able to have you on and it's such an important thing, and I don't think anyone really understands or realizes that until you've actually confronted it or been through it or know somebody that's going through it. And it is just an amazing thing. And I guess coping with it is probably the toughest thing I've ever done. It really is. And to your point of being able to um, have some answers to those questions and maybe some processes and things like that can get through it. And not just for a caregiver, but I think for an individual. It's just like if you know you're dealing with this. I sure wish I knew you when I needed you, so to speak. And I think going forward, this is a message that we can get out to
The
everyone.
world.
But
Hey,
um,
thank you so much,
well,
Jim, for
geez.
what you're doing as well. Again, please be kind to yourself because, yeah, we didn't know what we knew back then. All this stuff is very new, and um, for the caregivers out there, you're doing the best that you can with the resources that you have at your disposal, and we are here to help you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you so much.
Patty, thank you. And like I said before, I think this is something we should continue. So, we'll have to bring up other topics and things like that that would
I
be
would love that.
it's
Absolutely.
would be
Absolutely. We could talk about specific parts and how caregivers and professionals could really use this information to help and encourage, because we need to change the the tragedy um,
yeah,
perspective. This
yeah.
is not it is definitely difficult, and it's challenging, but it also can be an opportunity and a gift.
Patty, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You take care.
Thank you. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Bye bye.